This is SoundStage founder Doug Schneider. You're listening to the SoundStage Audiophile Podcast, your semi-regular deep dive into news, facts, opinions, and anecdotes about everything that really matters in the world of high-performance audio. Hosts Brent Butterworth and Dennis Berger have more than 5 decades worth of audio product testing experience, and a few hours of podcasting experience as well. Now, here's Brent and Dennis.
Hi, everyone. It's Dennis Berger, editor of SoundStage Access.
As well as Brent Butterworth, editor of SoundStage Solo.
And we both write for the SoundStage Network, which is a collection of 9 microsites covering all sorts of topics in audio, from headphones to connected audio to super high-end to budget stuff and everything in between.
Yes, every topic you might imagine someone that's into audio would be into.
And we've got a cool YouTube channel with all sorts of interviews and topics of discussion.
Okay, enough ads. Let's move on. Let's give our 5 listeners some actual content.
I am pretty sure we have
time.
7. We have 7 now. Yeah.
Okay.
So
we're growing.
Yeah, man. So anyway, this week I want to start with a cool piece that I saw. Actually, you showed me on Audioholics called THX Spatial Audio on Qobuz. Listen with any headphones. Pretty interesting topic there. I think we're going to have a lot to say. I think you're especially going to have a lot to say. But what do you, Brent Butterworth, want to discuss this week?
Well, I saw a review in the new issue of Stereophile. I saw it in the print edition, which I got for free at the CEDIA show, which just happened in Dallas. But I found a review by Jason Victor Serenis, who's one of their longtime reviewers, of a Nordost QNet network switch and QSource linear power supply. And it wasn't so much the review of the network switch and linear power supply that caught my eye. It's the statement in there that, quote unquote, everything in a system matters. Because as it happens, when I saw that, Doug, our founder and leader of the SoundStage Network, was right in the midst of an argument with someone on Facebook about exactly that same thing. And that's why the whole issue sort of solidified in my mind and made me feel like we have to talk about this. So you have something else we're going to discuss, I think? I
do. Our editor-in-chief, Jeff Fritz, went to Europe this summer and wrote about it. Mm-hmm. And the latest one, which is just published, was a Sonus Faber speaker production and design lab write-up, which is really, really cool. But there are a couple of things here. Firstly, I just want to talk about Jeff's visit and when he wrote. Mm-hmm. But more importantly, I think, well, not more importantly, but also importantly, I want to talk about stories of this type. I want to talk about visits to different manufacturers and different factories and things like that. I want to talk about the value of these kinds of pieces. And it occurs to me that probably before we started rolling tape here, I should have asked you whether you like these kinds of stories or not, because we're going to talk about that. And I'm honestly, I think, going to be surprised by your opinion. But
I think you will be surprised by my opinion.
Probably will. But before we get to that, let's pull up Audioholics real quick. There's a piece by Jacob Green. It's published on October 7th, in case anybody wants to scroll through the Audioholics homepage and find it. And the headline is THX Spatial Audio on Qobuz. Listen with any headphones. And he's in all capital letters. And he talks about THX Spatial Audio is, one of the headphone virtualizers, as opposed to DTS Headphone X and Dolby Atmos for headphones. Anyway, Qobuz, very popular streaming service amongst audiophiles. You and I both use it as an alternative to Spotify. We use it as reference material in most of our reviews, but they've now gone and they've got select tracks made available in this THX Spatial Audio that you can listen to no matter what your headphones are. You can, if you're plugging your headphones into your desktop headphone amp or what have you, as long as you can get Qobuz to those headphones, you can listen to spatial audio. So, what do you think about this, Brent?
Well, the whole spatial audio, first of all, everyone's piling on spatial audio. Everybody's got to have something on spatial audio now, right? Mm-hmm. So, and boy, once you get into the professional audio realm, oh my God, spatial audio. That's fine. But you can do all sorts of things and call them spatial audio. Now, I did check out, like THX has had spatial audio, THX Spatial Audio, as a processing technology that's been included in like a Razer app, playback app for computers and
for gaming.
So yeah, for gaming. And so you can, I tried it and it's like, well, okay, you take stereo music and kind of makes it a little more spacious sounding and stuff. It's like, well, that's fine if someone likes it. And I didn't think it was a whole lot different from what you might find as a preset built into a smartphone. But most of which have something on there now that says spatial audio that you can click.
Yeah.
And however, you can, as I gather it, okay, so Dolby Atmos, you're taking a whole bunch of so-called stems, right? Little pieces of things that you recorded, like a guitar or a vocal or whatever, and you're actually placing them in specific areas of space around the listener, right?
Yeah, so you're not saying like, when you and I mix and master the podcast, I'll take your voice and say, pan it 20% right.
Yeah.
And, my voice and say, pan it 20% left. But with these, they're like with Atmos, they're audio objects. And you don't say 20% right. You say, I want this object here. Right? So it's a little different than what we would normally think of as mixing. So.
Right. But it's a technology that, as I understand it, isn't a mixing technology. It's something that you can mix into. And that was the way that like Dolby Headphone was. And Dolby Headphone actually did have like X, Y, and Z coordinates built into it. However, there were mixes made for Dolby Headphone, and they basically just messed around in the studio, monitored it through Dolby Headphone, and got a cool sound out of it, which is just the same as David Chesky's doing with his new mega dimensional sound. He doesn't have a technology per se. He listens through his headphones and he messes around with the mixing board until he gets a cool spatial effect. Yeah. So that to me sounds kind of like what was done with these recordings. They have 3 recordings down at the end of this article in Audioholics that you can listen to. I guess you have to be a Qobuz subscriber.
I think you have to be a subscriber. Yeah.
Yeah, we are. So, not a problem for us, but, and we listen to them and they do sound pretty great. There's the one from Anat Cohen, who is a jazz clarinetist and saxophonist, who's really great, by the way. You should go check her out. A-N-A-T Cohen. That one's really nice. That one sounds like something that was specifically made to sound good in spatial audio. I don't know how exactly they produced it. Yeah. I don't know if they did an Atmos mix, then folded it into this. I don't know if they just messed around on a mixing board till it sounded good and then monitored it through this until it, I don't know, but it does sound really good. I think we can both agree on that, and people can go check this out, and you probably should, because why not? It's there. It's free. Check it out.
Yeah, that's the only one of the 3 that I really loved. Like, I could sit and listen to that all day. There's a Dinosaur Jr. track also, which, I mean, it was fine. I could take it or leave it. It's not the music. I like Dinosaur Jr., but in terms of this spatial audio thing, it was like, well, I would be just as happy with the stereo here. It didn't really make much difference. Then there is a track from an artist named Circuit du.
Yeah, which means in French, either circuit of eyes or circuit of eggs. I can't remember.
I think it's eyes. Yeah.
Okay.
But it was just like, I would almost rather listen to Yoko Ono. So there's really nothing they could do with spatial audio that would make that work for me, but whatever, get off my lawn. But the Anat Cohen thing was just really pleasant and really nice. It really pulled the music out of my head and sort of, what I found is when I was listening to it, it was a tendency for me to just close my eyes and sort of get lost in the mix. And I thought that was really neat.
Yeah, it was really beautiful. Go see Anat Cohen. I think is on tour right now. Go see her. She puts on an unbelievably great show. Even if you're not like do
you think she's coming to Montgomery, Alabama?
I was literally looking at her tour dates like a couple days ago, and she was definitely going to places I did not expect that were not, New York, LA, Chicago. So maybe so. Maybe. Yeah. Worth checking out. But she puts on a great show, and you don't have to be a jazz person to get into it. It's really, really great. But anyway, I one thing that I a little bit take issue with is they're kind of marketing this as like, oh, it works with any headphones. But any of these spatial audio things work with any headphones. Even the spatial audio that's on Apple Music will work with non-Apple headphones.
Yeah, I didn't realize
sound
that
quite as good. Now, Apple's got their own renderer, and they, of course, if you're using their headphones, they know you're using their headphones, and because they're wireless, and so it's ID'd, so they can apply some EQ curves and maybe a little something this and that to make it sound better and optimize it. But
they can also do a thing where, like, when you turn your head, the music doesn't turn.
Yeah, they can
with
do
your
the tracking
head,
and all that stuff, which is nice. But you don't. Spatial headphones are just two drivers. Almost all of them are just even the earphones that have God knows 12 or 15 drivers in them are still just blowing through a couple little holes into your ear. So they can't address those drivers individually with the surround sound technology. All right. So you're still going through a 2-wire connection to both ears. Yeah. And so there's only so much they can do with it, and they can't make it not work on other headphones. It may sound better on some. I think if you put on some nice like Hi-Fi Man open backs, those sound more spacious anyway. So the Atmos or THX Spatial Audio effect is going to be amplified. But if you put on the crappy sound inside of earbuds, you're probably not going to get much of a spatial effect.
Yeah, kudos to Apple's marketing machine, because I actually didn't realize that. I mean, I guess if I cared more about spatial audio, I would have known that you could use any headphones with Apple Music spatial audio. But I thought, well, no, they've managed to lock it out. And if they don't detect Apple, because they market it like AirPods Pro 2 with spatial audio, and it's like, okay, I mean, I guess then that's what you got to have to make it work. I didn't realize that, which again, that tells you how much I don't care about the spatial audio stuff. But
yeah, well, they're trying to sell headphones, everyone's trying to. Everyone in spatial audio, I will say, is trying to kind of position what they're doing as something special. And whether or not it is, because that's what you got to do in any business. You got to put your unique selling prospect out there, as they say in the advertising biz, and make a point to the consumer of why they should buy your stuff. And, if you're a little misleading here and there, well, this is America, damn it.
I have to say, I want to correct myself there. It's like I said, I don't really care about spatial audio. I didn't care about spatial audio for music much until I heard this Anat Cohen thing. And now I'm like, I think I'm gonna explore more of this stuff on Qobuz. Right now there's a limited selection. They've got an album from Information Society, and then they've got 4 other tracks. They've got a THX Spatial Audio playlist that's got these 3 tracks in it. So it's still, this is nascent, but if they do more with it, I think I'm gonna listen to it more, because that Anat Cohen thing was that was really pleasant. I really dug it. So kudos to Qobuz for making me care about something that Apple couldn't. So
ooh. Oh, they'll be thrilled if they listen to this podcast. We'll have to email them and say, hey, you should listen to this podcast. Dennis said something nice about you. Then they'll listen to it, and then they'll post it on Facebook, and they'll go, Dennis said something nice about us.
Yeah. Hey, we should do that then.
See, we're just as shameless as any of these companies are.
Well, I never claimed not to be. So anyway, you want to take a break, man, and listen to some music real quick?
Yeah, and we'll be back in a couple minutes.
All right.
And we're back. I'm Brent Butterworth.
And I'm Dennis Berger.
And for our second segment today, we are going to discuss a review that's in Stereophile of the Nordost QNet network switch and QSource linear power supply. Although we're really not going to discuss that review all that much. What we are going to discuss is a concept that kind of reared its head in that review. And I actually kind of noticed it because I was looking at a conversation on Facebook where Doug Schneider, our founder and guiding light, was arguing with a guy named Gordon Rankin, who's famous as for Wavelength Audio is his company, and they design DACs, and he's famous for creating the asynchronous connection between DAC and computer, where the DAC actually controls the timing of the signal. He was pointing out, he was saying the old sort of thing that a lot of people have said in high-end audio for decades: everything in a system matters. And he and Doug were arguing about that, and I jumped in as well, basically saying, you got any proof of that? And he did not. This will come as a big surprise to you, I'm sure.
Utter shock.
So Jason Victor Serenis in Stereophile, who I have met a couple times. He's a very nice guy, and he is one of the definitely two best writers on classical music in the audiophile world. Go read his stuff in Stereophile. He's just great. Even if you don't understand classical music, he will explain it to you and tell you why the stuff he's reviewing is worth listening to or not. I mean, it's really exceptional writing. But anyway, so he's reviewing this network switch, and he says, here we go again, everything in a system matters. And I'll kind of go on a little bit. Sometimes improvements are large, as in upgrading to a new DAC server amplifier or speaker. Sometimes they're small, as when a rack cable power product or footer is replaced. I've put large and small in quotes. He put them in quotes. I didn't say quote, but whatever. Because even small changes can have outsized importance in the impact the music makes. The cumulative sum of small incremental improvements can raise performance from good or very good to great. All right, let's just stop right there. Because I don't want to grind into this too much, because he's just saying stuff that other people have been saying forever. There's no reason to criticize him. And we might criticize the people that publish this stuff for decades without questioning it. But this is common, like I said, and then Doug and I got into this argument, and some other audio writer who I don't want to give any press to, so I won't name. Oh yes, everything in a system matters. And I'm like, how do you know this? Give me proof. And of course, no proof was forthcoming. So I want to. This is basically the whole idea that everything in a system matters is, in my opinion, somebody way down the line, 20 years ago, 30 years ago or something, conceived of this idea as basically a sales tool. And that way a manufacturer can make the slightest improvement in a product and say, oh, well, you wouldn't think that matters, but this really matters. And I think that there have always been a lot of very impressionable audio writers who don't have a lot of knowledge of physics or the technical side of this.
Or in this case, networking, TCP/IP.
In networking, that's for sure. Who also don't have a lot of experience doing scientific controlled testing, where you start to realize, I really can't hear the difference I thought I heard there. And so this has been going on forever. And I really think it's basically just functioning as a sales line that the industry perpetuates in order so that people who make some kind of doohickey that doesn't really do anything can still sell it. And just to let's look at this. All right, everything in this system matters. Well,
can I pick apart the first example, the large example?
Sure.
Because he says sometimes improvements are large, air quotes, as in upgrading to a new DAC. I think we'd agree, not large. A new server, insignificant in terms of audio quality. Amplifier, not so much. Speaker, huge. Huge. And then sometimes they're small, as in, a rack, a cable. Some cables can make a big difference if they do something really stupid and wrong, but the power product, Well, you know,
okay,
I will say
those are all at least small to say the least.
Well, I'll say some power products can make a huge difference in that, like, they might keep your amplifier from getting fried by a lightning strike. You know, that's a pretty, you can listen to your amplifier tomorrow instead of you can't. That's a pretty large difference.
That's a big difference. Yeah.
Yeah. But
I would hear that.
Yeah. There's just the what he's grouping as large and small differences is so utterly arbitrary. Like, how can you claim that a server, like the hard drive on which your music is stored, how can you argue that the hard drive is going to make a huge difference in audio quality? And again,
sometimes improvements are large. I'll fix this.
Yeah.
Sometimes improvements are large, as in upgrading to a different transducer, i.e. speaker, headphone, turntable cartridge. Okay. Those things can make an obvious difference in the sound. Yeah. And maybe the whole turntable itself. But those are transducers. Electronics don't make a large difference. And, you know, we just have decades of scientific tests to prove that.
Yeah.
And decades of people not doing scientific tests who say, oh, no, they make a difference. But that's not, you know. Anyway, so, but let me just take an absurd example. What if you took a green pea, you know, like a Lesueur green pea, right? And what if you put that on top of your speaker? Would that make a difference? Well, I think we can all agree no. And I'm sure there's some, I can think of one guy in particular, the guy I refused to name before, who'd be like, well, gosh, we just don't know. But whatever. So obviously, in that case, putting a single green pea on top of your speaker, assuming it's cooked and not like a single one that'll rattle around, it's not going to do anything at all. Okay, so that is a false statement.
Yeah.
Okay, so everything in the system matters. No, it doesn't. In my mind, the job of audio publications and audio writers should be to figure out what matters and what doesn't, rather than just say, oh gosh, everything matters. If that's what you're doing, you're not helping your readers at all. And if everything matters, then anybody, you know, you can come up with, I don't know, I'm just going to pull something off the top of my head. I'm not thinking of anybody in particular, but like, let's say you came up with an RCA plug and you threw some stuff in there that supposedly removed all the RF from your system, and you charged hundreds of dollars extra to coat that RCA plug with some kind of goop.
This is just off the top of your head, right?
Just off the top of my head. Just
hypothetical.
Hypothetical example. I'm not picking on anybody in particular, but whatever. I mean, it's like, then you can say, well, gosh, you know, everything in the system matters. So the fact that I charge $300 extra for this plug, which, by the way, doesn't work in the first place, and this one's coated with this goop that supposedly absorbs, I don't know, something, then you can get away with that. And so it's basically, if you say everything in the system matters, all you're doing is you are refusing to differentiate between the people who can make things in audio that do make a difference and the people that can't. And I, for one, am happy to make that differentiation, because some of this crap doesn't do anything. And some of it, a lot of it, does. Some of these people are real engineers who know science, and they can deliver something that is worth your money. Some of these people are flim-flam artists who are just making stuff up, and audio writers should distinguish between those things.
Yeah. You know, I used to be the regional head of IT for the largest civil engineering firm in the world. And so I know a decent amount about networking. So when I read this, when they posted this piece on Stereophile, I was heading for the comment section to go, okay, but what about the way data in TCP/IP is packetized? You know, what about the packets and the error correction? and like, none of this makes any sense. And I saw somebody else had already made that comment, so I didn't have to. They're like, this is just not how networking works. And immediately there were people piling on in the comments like, oh, you know everything. Like, there have been all these things that people said were impossible, but turned out to make all the difference in the world. And, you know, this guy came back like, name one. Like, what?
Yeah.
and it turned into this just big religious battle in the comment section. But to anyone listening to this who goes to the comment section, the guy who talks about networking packets, he is correct, and I'm not trying to appeal to authority here. I'm not saying I'm right because whatever, but just go study how networking data is transmitted and you will understand that he is correct. And I am not saying that to pick on anybody who writes about this stuff. We can't know about everything. Right. I a few months back, I reviewed this NADC 399 integrated amp, which uses Hypex in-core amplifier technology, which we've talked about quite a bit on this podcast, which, all sorts of people on the SoundStage network have written about, right? We talked about it on SoundStage Australia. We've talked about it all over the place, but I'm writing this review, and I said in the introduction, guys, I've read the white paper on this thing. I've read all the marketing on this thing. I don't understand how it works. All right. So I'm not going to make any claims about the technical superiority of it because I just don't understand it. I don't understand how their in-core amp technology is different from bog standard classic D. Right. And if I don't understand it, I'm not going to say, oh, well, this is why it's better. Right. I had people emailing me going, well, if you don't understand it, you shouldn't be writing about it. It's just have you ever read an audiophile publication before? So nobody understands any of this stuff. And they're just repeating what's in the press release. So
yeah,
we all need to be more honest and say when we don't understand something because we can't understand everything.
That's right.
I am not picking on Jason for not understanding how networking technology works. I'm just saying, buddy, if you don't understand it, admit that you don't understand it. Don't talk about how changing this power supply and this network switch added more light and spiritual insight, because those things can't be transmitted over an Ethernet cable.
Not that you know of.
Not that I know of. That
Wait, can't you get can't you access Deepak Chopra through the internet?
You shouldn't be able to, but you can.
There's some light and spiritual guidance that will pass through an internet cable. So there you go. I just disproved your entire theory. This is like shooting fish in a barrel.
Do you remember that? Do you remember that Tim Minchin beat poem that I sent you that time, Storm?
Yes. Yeah.
It's a beat poem about critical thinking. I think everybody should be forced to listen to that at least once a week. So,
but I have one more thing to say about this. When you say, in my opinion, when you say everything in the system matters, you are disrespecting the music. Okay, because you are not going to gain more insight about, say, John Coltrane by putting a green pea on top of your speakers, or by putting little sawhorses under your cables or anything like that. You may enjoy spending money for a doodad, but you are not going to get any more insight into John Coltrane. If you want insight into John Coltrane, then listen to more of his albums, which there are a ton, and I don't know anybody who's listened to them all. And read a book about John Coltrane. Read Walt Weiskopf's book about giant steps, for God's sake. Try to understand what Coltrane's doing there. Yeah. There's so much heavy going on there, and a stupid doohickey under your cables, or a stupid, thing that plugs into the back of your amp and supposedly gets rid of the RF has nothing to do with John Coltrane. If you want to understand John Coltrane or Bach or, The Weeknd or any of these people, you have to dig into what they're doing. You have to look at who their influences are. You have to look at that genre. Maybe you want to understand a little bit about it from a technical standpoint, what they're doing harmonically, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Buying some doodad is not going to give you more insight into the music. I'm sorry.
Right.
Or just out.
Listen to the artists talking about their music. We've mentioned before Björk's new podcast, which is just a new episode just dropped today as we're recording this. It's the 9th of 10. But I've got an article coming up about this. My favorite album of Björk's is Vespertine, and I realized a long time ago I've never used a single cut from Vespertine as reference material, and I have probably pulled reference material from every single other album of hers, right? But for whatever reason, my favorite of her albums I've never pulled reference material from, despite the fact that to me it sounds beautiful. Yeah. That podcast made me understand why. she mixed that album to sound good on laptop speakers, right?
Wow.
So it will sound good on anything. And if it sounds good on anything, then it's not really going to be great at telling you the difference between one speaker or another, or, the limitations of an amp or power supply or something like that. So
that knowledge matters.
Yes.
A stupid doohickey that doesn't do anything, that is physically incapable of making a difference in the sound, doesn't matter. It's our job as audio writers and as audio publications to know the difference and point out the difference. And in my view, a publication where I know for a fact there are at least 2 people on this publication that know better, but they still publish this stuff.
Yeah.
And I am not forgiving of that action.
Yeah. Well, our blood pressure is, I think both of our blood pressure readings are getting up. So let's go enjoy some light and spiritual insight for a minute and cool off, get a drink of water. We'll come back for a final topic.
Light and spiritual insight.
All right.
Bam.
And welcome back to the SoundStage Audiophile Podcast. I'm Dennis Berger.
And I'm Brent Butterworth.
And to wrap up this week, we're going to be talking about a series of stories that our editor-in-chief, Jeff Fritz, has been working on his site, SoundStage Ultra. We're going to be talking about the newest piece. It's called European Tour 2022, Sonus Faber Speaker Production and Design Lab. I think there's some really cool stuff in this piece to talk about, as well as the previous piece in this series. But I think more interestingly, I'm living on the edge here. I want to talk to you about the subject of articles like this, because I kind of don't know. This seems like the kind of thing you're either going to love or hate, and I'm going to be fascinated to find out in real time, along with our audience, which of those two it is.
Dennis,
so
what thing on earth doesn't fall into the category of I'm going to love it or hate it?
That's true. That is absolutely true. So, but anyway, look, I'll be honest with you. My main goal here is just to point people to these write-ups on Ultra, because I think they're really, really cool. I think Jeff has done some amazing photography, and I really, really like the photos from inside Sonus Faber, some of the historical stuff, some of the new design stuff, some of you get to see like really close-up photography of components inside speakers that a lot of people don't get to see, like the crossover network, and all of that is just really, really, really neat for me. But I'm wondering for you, is there any aspect of this post in particular or the previous one that stood out? Was there anything you really, really liked?
Yeah, I liked it. They showed how they put the crossovers together, and crossovers are a part of a speaker that is not that well understood by most audiophiles, although it is in ways the most important part of the speaker. And you look at these crossover networks, and I love that they showed this, because this one that they're showing here has, let me count really fast. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 capacitors I can see. No, 8, 9, 10, 11 capacitors I can see. And like probably about 12 resistors, and about, it's got a couple transformers, but I think they're just using those as chokes. And about, or maybe they are just chokes, and I'm thinking they're transformers. Anyway, and about probably a dozen chokes. And there's this sort of mythology in audio that simpler is better. And that's just absolutely not true in speakers. Once you start stripping your crossover down to just a few parts, then you're getting to the point where the speaker doesn't really work correctly. They clearly put a lot of work into this crossover design. And, that's one place where you can get away without putting much work into it. I've seen some real cheap speakers I pulled apart that had like 3 parts in the crossover because they could get away with it. And, notoriously, I have a dear friend in the speaker business that is also a dear friend of yours, and I'm not going to name him, but he he told me that's something back in the old days. Sometimes speaker manufacturers would, send out like the sort of actual design of the speaker for review. And then when they'd actually ship the thing, they'd start pulling parts out of the crossover. And I know for a fact, I know a very well-known speaker designer, freelance guy, who and consultant who I actually recommended him for this gig because they asked me to do it, and I couldn't do it because I'm not the guy who does this. Anyway, so he designed them like they had some speakers. The design was already done. The drivers were already picked. They just needed somebody to make it work. And so he did the crossover, and he did a crossover, and it was great. But like they pull parts out so they can save money. And Sonus Faber is not saving any money here because these are premium parts, and Mundorf capacitors, and they're humongous capacitors. They really, this is a very high efficiency and very precise and well-made crossover. And this is like, their speakers are gorgeous. They're among the prettiest, most beautifully made speakers you can buy, but they are they put as much work into the inside as they put into the outside, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, Jeff is showing you some stuff here that you normally don't get to see unless you like watch Danny Ritchie's YouTube channel, right? Mm-hmm. So I thought that was really cool. But in the previous article in this series, you also had something really wicked cool, I thought, which was a passive crossover testing device built and designed by Franco Serblin, who was the founder of Sonus Faber, which is just like a big wooden suitcase with all of these knobs and dials and all of the labeling is like handwritten, and it's like a piece of audio history. But it's almost like a work of art in itself. And I've never seen this thing before. And it's beautiful and awesome. And it's really, really cool. I want people to go look at it. So.
True. However, I have to point out that no engineering tool is beautiful. It might be awesome. They polished this thing up a lot before they put it out there. Well, there is no way that a speaker designer had this is a giant switch box full of capacitors and inductors and resistors, right? That he can use to experiment with different crossover topologies and slopes. Yeah. And so this thing looked like hell when he was done with it. I'm sure probably a lot of the I have custom switchers that I've built for blind testing and things like that. And they have, blue painter's tape all over them with notes scrawled on there and little markings. And I keep changing out the painter's tape and they've got scratches because a lot of them have been transported all over the place.
But then again, you're not Italian. Maybe the Italians just do it different, man.
No, I think the engineer. All right, so I think the engineer overrides the nationality. I think engineers of different countries are more like each other than people from one nationality.
It's probably right. Right.
Like if you can take an engineer from Japan and an engineer from Italy and an engineer from Texas, right? Mm-hmm. And they will have more in common in terms of their way of doing things than say 3 people from Italy.
Yeah.
Am I wrong?
No, you're not.
I am
wrong.
not wrong.
You're not wrong.
I know engineers from all over the world.
Yeah.
they are all. I don't want to say they're all the same.
Yeah.
But there's a common thread. To say the least.
Let's get to ulterior motives here real quick, because I love stories like this, and I've written for publications before. In fact, a publication that you and I used to work for, like I begged to do stories like this, and it was just shot down. And the reason that I was given was, well, if we do one company, we have to do every company, and we don't have time to do every company, and it just makes our advertisers mad. And it's like, yeah, but
were you working for Donald Trump? That's a good Trump impression.
Basically. But I love these kinds of stories because they humanize these companies. And like you could not see you couldn't see a story about this about Apple AirPods, man. I mean, it would be really depressing if you did.
Well, I'd love to. I'd love to see that.
But let me just get off on a weird tangent here. There's this really amazing book that you're making me read right now called Status and Culture by W. David Marks. And, he talks a lot about status and culture and art and fashion and how things change and evolve. And it's gotten me thinking about all sorts of things. But one of the things that it's got me thinking about is value. We've been talking about this a lot internally on email threads in SoundStage amongst our fellow writers and editors and publisher and everything. Like, what does value mean, and what are the different types of value? I think articles like this add value because you get to see the people who are making this stuff. You get to see, I think in a lot of ways, like it's kind of hard to fake like some of the real care and passion that they're putting into these products and the way they're working on them. You get to see their working environments. You get to see them working together. I just think it's cool and neat. And especially with a company like this and products like these, I think this adds something to the experience of you're not just buying a product, you are buying in a lot of ways someone's passion. And I think that's pretty cool. But what do you think about it? Do you value stories like this?
Yes, I do. I'm going to surprise you with a little piece of news here. I've only ever written one story like this.
Oh.
In 30-something years of doing audio writing.
Wow.
And that's because magazines like almost never ran these things, right? So this is more like a website phenomenon.
Well, for me, it was mostly trade publications where I've gotten to write stuff like this,
But I basically, no one ever assigned it. And when we were both working on Home Entertainment Magazine back about 2005, 6, 7, something like that, I did a story like this on Totem Acoustics, the speaker manufacturer up in Montreal.
Yeah.
And it was an absolute kick because Totem is really, they make a lot of cool speakers, but they are really idiosyncratic among speaker manufacturers in their approach. And, a lot of speaker manufacturers kind of do a whole line of speakers and they try to do things as consistently within the line as they can, right? And using a lot of the same drivers and a lot of the same, everything. But Totem does everything different for like every speaker they make, and the speakers are supposed to have their own personality, and there's not supposed to be a Totem house sound except for good, I guess. But they really, I got to go to their wood shop, which basically looked like about one step above a good high school wood shop. And by that, I don't mean it was primitive. I mean, everything was, if you go to a high school wood shop, there's no CNC there. I guess I haven't been to a high school in like 40 years, but there's no CNC there. It's like people are cutting stuff with saws and using actual, they're using, big power tools and stuff to do the wood fabrication, as opposed to, some of these factories. I've been in factories where it's almost like, you got container cars full of wood and metal that come out, and then the factory's kind of a black box almost, and then speakers come out the other end. And Totem was not like that. It was everything's built by hand by dudes in a big shop south of Montreal. And I thought that was incredibly cool, and because it's not that that's necessarily better. And in fact, in ways, it can be worse because it's not going to be as consistent. But it's kind of cooler and more personal, and you feel better about buying a product like that maybe than you do about buying something that's stamped out in a black box factory where you don't know what's going on. So I remember I do like these things.
I did a tour of Triad speakers one time. It was really cool. And
I did too.
They made a lot of custom stuff. And what was really cool is like, as I was in the first room, there was just a piece of wood, just a big piece of wood that hadn't been, it had been planed, and that's about it. But in sort of grease pencil, the word Friday was written on it. And I was like, what does that mean? What does Friday mean? And they were like, oh, that means that speaker has to ship on Friday. And it was it was Wednesday. This thing was going to be just a completely custom center channel that was made to fit a specific cabinet. It was going to be, the facade was going to be finished in wood that was reclaimed from a barn on the owner's property. And they were going to turn this piece of wood into a speaker in 2 days, right? So those little things, I don't know, man. I just love stuff like that. So
what was the coolest thing you ever saw in a factory?
The coolest thing, this is going to be a time relative thing, but I remember I visited Paradigm Anthem many moons ago, back before 3D printing was as ubiquitous as it is now. And they had a 3D printer that was about the size of a VW microbus. And they were just sort of like testing out little 3D printing stuff to prototype, little bits and pieces that, the little jewelry that go in the speaker. And I thought, maybe if I saw it today, it wouldn't be mind blowing, but at the time that just blew the brains right out the back of my head.
Cool. I saw it. I think the thing that stuck with me the most was I was in a Yamo factory, and Yamo is a brand that is still kind of out there. It's bigger in Europe than here, but they were really big in Europe and kind of trying to make a play for the US market. Klipsch ended up buying them. Anyway, I went in their factory in Denmark, and that's the first time I saw how like mass market speakers are put together. And it's really cool because you think that like they cut out all these panels of wood and start sticking them together. Mm-hmm. No, the wood has, like a poly wrap thing on it, right? Mm-hmm. It's got like the fake wood, or there's MDF panels, right? Mm-hmm. And they've already got like a fake wood grain plastic coating on the side, and that's the finish that you see when you put the speaker together, right? So that's already on the wood, and they, with CNC, computer numeric control, that's like computer controlled machining. Mm-hmm. With CNC, they would cut these 90-degree V grooves where the joints of the speaker were going to be, and this is all automated. So a big piece of MDF goes in with this plastic, vinyl wood grain backer on it. They cut the grooves in, and they cut it just to the point, they cut right to the joint of the wood and the plastic. So they leave the plastic and they cut the wood. And so what that allows them to do is then they have another thing that goes in there and shoots a little bit of glue in there. And then they have another machine that folds the whole thing up. So the speaker basically is like a thing out of paper that you would just fold together, and it's like instantaneous. It's like it goes from the sheet that's all done until a speaker box, like bam, all done.
Oh, neat.
And the whole thing was all machined and like ready to go, and then they slapped this together and bam, off the line. It's literally in like 2 seconds.
That is really cool.
Although I got to say, nothing compared to going to the Fender factory in Corona, California.
Oh, yeah?
The Fender Guitar Factory, it was just incredible. They still have machinery in there that Leo Fender built himself.
Oh, cool.
And I was shocked by how much guitar, those are the fancy American-made Stratocasters and stuff.
I've heard their Mexican factory is really cool, too.
I'm sure. I mean, it's kind of right across the border. It's probably almost the same. Mm-hmm. But I was shocked by the amount of hand labor that goes into those instruments. I mean, the frets are put in by a guy, like one guy, who, arranges all the frets on the neck. It's already cut by a saw that goes in and goes across the neck, right? So the slots are already there, and he arranges all the frets in the neck, and then he has like this sort of inflatable bladder thing that he puts on the neck, and he hits a button and it goes funk, and it pushes all the frets in.
Wait, it goes what?
Funk. And it pushes all the frets in. But then you go into like another room, and there's guys with masks on, with standing there in front of these big sanding drums that are like a foot in diameter or something. And these sanding drums are spinning like wild, and they are sanding strap bodies by hand. And then you go in another room, you go in their custom shop, and you had there were two women there whose job was to hand wind pickups, and they had like a bobbin, like a sewing machine thing, and they had a foot pedal, and they would sit there and do it by hand, and it would spin the pickup around and around, and it would put the wire on the pickup, and they had a thing that counted the number of turns, so you'd know how many wraps of wire you had.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just like, oh my God, it's the same way they did it in Leo Fender's era. And granted, those are the high-end Strats and Tellies and stuff like that, not the ones you go buy for $500 at Guitar Center.
Right.
But still, I was just like, I can't believe, and this is only a few years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So that was amazing. Plant tours are really fun. I haven't been on one in so long though. And, I used to go on them. It used to like in the 90s, it was just endless plant tours.
Yeah.
But a lot more stuff was made in the US then.
Yeah.
TVs were made in the US back then.
Yeah.
And, a lot of speakers were made in the U.S. Not that many now, except for really high-end ones. And a lot of amps were made in the U.S. And yeah, some are still, but only high-end ones. And so, I got to say, high-end manufacturing for amplifiers is not, it's not all that glamorous. They kind of put those, all the high-end manufacturer, high-end amplifier manufacturing facilities I've seen were small, mm-hmm. and they basically have big tables, and they put, they get the metalwork in from. They don't do the metalwork themselves. They get the metalwork in from somebody else, and they unwrap the metalwork and plop it on the table. And they have they have people that load the circuit boards with all the parts, and they assemble them, and they test them. But it's really kind of not. Dan D'Agostino, when he started Dan D'Agostino Master Audio Systems after Krell, he put those first amps together in his living room.
Yeah.
Those are probably worth a lot of money now.
By the way, I wanted to say, just before I forget, I think I alluded to this earlier, but I don't pay attention to anything I say, so maybe not. But Jeff has a whole series called European Tour 2022. Mm-hmm. He visited Denmark and visited Griffin Audio Designs. Let's see, where else did he visit? He went to the Griffin Audio Listening Room. He went to, where else did he go? He went to the Ava Group. So I'm not going to link to all of these in the show notes. I'm probably just going to link to the Sonus Faber ones that we talked about. But I think everybody should go to SoundStage Ultra and check out all of these, because it's a really, really cool series. You get to kind of, meet Jeff and see his family. It's just really cool. It's kind of like a summer vacation combined with hi-fi. And I think
it's exactly what it was.
it personalizes a lot of this stuff. And I just think it's neat, and I think people would enjoy the whole series. So,
yeah, go check it out. It's very cool. He really kind of shows you a lot about how these products are conceived and manufactured.
Yeah,
it's cool. If you're into this stuff, you really ought to know. You ought to see how this stuff is made.
Yeah, heck yeah. Was there anything else you want to talk about this week, man?
That's all I want to talk about this week, but we got plenty more to come.
Yeah, well, let's do some credits then, man.
Okay, good. The music, I think, is going to be by my good friend Terry Landry.
We get more Terry this week?
I think we get more Terry this week. We put it in last week, and he sent me a folder full of stuff. He's like, yeah, you can use that, I guess, if you want to. So I got to dig through, and we'll find some stuff, but it'll be all Terry. The music at the beginning and end is me, mm-hmm. and the music, the two tunes in the middle that are sophisticated sounding are Terry, because I don't write sophisticated.
We should say this is a Butterburger production, which means that one of us did the mixing and mastering and editing. We don't really know who, and we're not telling. So
yeah, and the other one gave his opinion of it.
Yeah, and we are a production of the SoundStage Network, which, as I said in the intro, is a collection of 9 microsites that cover all sorts of topics in audio. So if you've got interest in consumer audio, we probably have a site that it doesn't pander to you. We try not to pander, but it is up your alley. So yeah.
But we've covered everything from literally $10 earphones to speaker systems that are probably $500,000.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Cool, man. You ready to wrap it up?
I'm ready to wrap it up. Let's wrap now.
All right. Bye.
Bye.